In a dense forest, a red-haired boy, no older than 5, diligently practiced his swordsmanship with a short blade. It was midday, the sun beating down mercilessly. Sweat plastered the boy's clothes to his skin. "Man, this heat is brutal," Shin Uzumaki grumbled, but his training continued unabated. A little sunshine wouldn't derail his pursuit of strength. "Shin, there you are. What are you doing out here in this inferno? Trying to fry your brains?" A small head popped out from behind a large tree. Kusino Uzumaki skipped towards Shin, her red hair a fiery halo in the sunlight. Shin paused his practice and turned, a wry smile on his face as he looked at the adorable girl. "Kusina, now's not really the time for a tea party." Kusina puffed out her cheeks, her pout on full display. "Shin, you used to hang out with me all the time. Now you're giving me the cold shoulder." Tears welled up in Kusina's eyes, threatening to cascade down her cheeks. Shin felt a wave of exasperation. "Kusina, do you think I'm out here baking in this heat for fun? It's not exactly a picnic." Shin sat down, taking a long pull from his water bottle to rehydrate. Unlike the carefree Kusina, Shin carried a secret burden. He was a transmigrant, reborn into the world of Naruto as a newborn baby. The initial shock of landing in this world, where danger lurked around every corner, had been profound. Fortunately, he wasn't just some random civilian but a member of the Uzumaki clan in the land of whirlpools. But even that was a double-edged sword. It was the period after the First Shinobi World War, before the Second had erupted. The Naruto storyline he knew was still decades in the future. This was the era when the land of whirlpools faced its imminent demise. Shin didn't know the exact date, but he knew the clock was ticking. His only path forward was to grind his strength, to maximize his chances of surviving the destruction of the land of whirlpools. He wasn't about to let his second chance at life go to waste. "Shin, are you keeping secrets from me?" Kusina asked, her eyes mirroring the concern she felt for him. Shin looked at Kusina, his gaze serious. "Kusina, what if I told you that soon, the land of whirlpools, the Uzumaki clan, will face a disaster unlike any other? Would you believe me?" "No way, Shin. You're pulling my leg, right?" Kusina giggled, taking his words as a joke. Shin shrugged. If even Kusina, who trusted him implicitly, wouldn't buy it, convincing the rest of the clan was a lost cause. The destruction of the land of whirlpool seemed inevitable. He wasn't exactly Mr. Worldwide. No one would take him seriously. Ding! A crisp, mechanical chime echoed in Shin's mind, jolting him. Replication system activated. "Greetings, Master. I await your commands." Shin felt a surge of excitement. He had a golden finger. But why now? After 5 years in this world, the system finally decided to wake up. "Shin, what's up?" Kusina asked, attuned to his every shift in mood. "Nothing, Kusina. Just remembered something I gotta do. I'll definitely hang out with you tomorrow. Gotta run for now." Shin sprang onto a tree branch, vanishing in a blur of motion. Kusina's jaw dropped. That speed and agility were beyond most genin. Shin was hiding some serious skills. Kusina clenched her fists, a playful anger bubbling up. "If you ditch me tomorrow, you'll be sorry," she shouted after him. Instead of heading home, Shin made his way to a secluded riverbank to delve into his system's interface. "System, lay it on me. What can you do?" Shin asked, a mix of anticipation and anxiety in his voice. If this system turned out to be a dud, it would be a major letdown. This system is designated the replication system. It can copy anything, from jutsu to chakra, even Keki-I Genkai. Shin's eyes widened. Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan, Kagaya Itsutsuki's Rain Sharinan all within his grasp. The various overpowered dojutsu of the Mangekyo Sharinan, Kagaya Itsutsuki's immortality, All those S-rank jutsu and keki genkai, the possibilities were endless. Hold on, there have to be some strings attached, right? Shin asked, his excitement tempered by a dose of realism. It couldn't be that easy. Affirmative. Replication requires the expenditure of replication cards. These are categorized into common, advanced, and divine levels. Common replication cards can replicate jutsu up to B rank, including B rank jutsu, chakra, and physical abilities of jonin, and so on. Advanced replication cards can replicate jutsu and secret techniques up to S rank, including S rank, chakra and physical abilities of kage, and common keki genkai, such as scorch release and lava release. Divine replication cards are unrestricted and can replicate any target. Alright, so how do I get my hands on these replication cards? Shin asked, barely able to contain his impatience. There are two primary acquisition methods. First, the system will bestow upon you one replication card annually. The specific category common, advanced, or divine is determined by a random variable. The second method involves the completion of missions tailored to your preferences. Upon successful completion, you will be rewarded with replication cards. Missions are optional, and there are no penalties for failure. 1 card per year, not bad at all, Shin mused. His system seemed to be quite the benevolent benefactor. And the missions were optional, with no repercussions for failure? That was a relief. Shin valued his freedom. The last thing he needed was some overbearing system bossing him around. Oh, and system, don't suppose there's a welcome package for new users? Shin asked, a hopeful glint in his eyes. The newbie gift pack was granted to you at the moment of your birth, Master. You should be cognizant of its presence. Shin paused, then ventured a guess. Could it be the sage body? The sage body was a keki genkai common to the Uzumaki clan. Every member of the Senju and Uzumaki clans possessed it, but Shin had always felt his was different, more potent. Affirmative. Upon your transmigration into this world, Master, the system bestowed upon you the perfect sage body. Shin couldn't contain his elation. A perfect sage body, putting him on par with the legendary Hashirama Senju. Hashirama, with his perfect sage body and self-developed wood release, had taken down Madara Uchiha, wielder of the eternal Mangekyo Sharinan, and the full-fledged Nine Tails. Did this mean he could achieve Hashirama's level of power? With the system's assistance, surpassing Hashirama and reaching the realm of the Six Paths might not be just a pipe dream. His future was looking brighter by the minute. Wio, with the system in play, at least I've got a fighting chance in this crazy world. Shin noticed he had 5 replication cards stocked up. He'd been in the Naruto world for 5 years now, and even though the system had been snoozing this whole time, it hadn't skimped on the annual card handouts. Is my luck really this rotten? Shin checked the cards and found they were all common. The yearly card was a random drop. With a bit of luck, he could have scored a divine card. Sadly, fortune didn't seem to be on his side, not even an advanced card in sight. Let's see what's on the mission board. Shin opened the system's mission interface and found a single quest waiting for him. Survival. Survive the destruction of the land of whirlpools. Reward. 1 common replication card failure. No penalty. System. Are you kidding me? No penalty for failure? If I fail, I'm dead. Shin couldn't help but complain. Could this survival mission even be failed? Failing meant kicking the bucket, didn't it? And the reward is pretty stingy, too. Master, rewards are commensurate with mission difficulty. This particular mission is not classified as high difficulty. Shin couldn't argue with that. For someone who was prepared, this mission wasn't exactly climbing Mount Everest. In the original story, when the land of whirlpools went kaput, a good number of Uzumaki clan members survived, like Karen's mother, for example. Time to head back. Shin channeled chakra to his legs, leaped onto a tree branch, and vanished in a few swift movements. He lived in a secluded spot, far from the clan's main grounds. It had its perks, mainly peace and quiet. "You're finally back, Shin." Kushina was sitting on the steps in front of the house, chin resting on her hands. Her eyes, which had been downcast, lit up when she saw him. "Kushina, you haven't been sitting here this whole time, have you?" Shin walked over and pulled her up. It was just the two of them living here. A year ago, he had still been living with the clan, but things had happened, and he'd moved out. Kushina had no family left in the clan. Her parents had died in an accident when she was 3. Shin was her only friend, so she came with him. "I've been waiting for you forever. If you hadn't come back soon, I would have starved to death," Kushina said weakly. She couldn't cook, so she relied on Shin for meals. "Weren't there some snacks left? You could have munched on those." Kushina gave an awkward laugh, her small hands fidgeting with her clothes. I might have finished those already." All right. I'll whip something up right away." As Shin was about to lead Kushina inside, he heard a faint sound behind him. He turned and saw a middle-aged man with red hair, dressed in shinobi garb, standing a short distance away. The man was expressionless. He held a small bundle, which he tossed to Shin. "This is your living allowance." Shin caught the bundle and opened it. Besides money, there were 2 jutsu scrolls. "Those jutsu scrolls are your mother's belongings. The elder instructed me to deliver them to you." With that, the man vanished in a swirl of leaves. Mother's belongings. Shin felt a pang of sadness. He unfurled the 2 jutsu scrolls. They contained 2 sealing jutsu, the adamantine sealing chains and the 4-symbol seal. Both were incredibly powerful sealing jutsu, especially effective against tailed beasts. "Shin, are you okay?" Kushina asked cautiously. "Don't worry, I'm fine. I'll make dinner first, and after we eat, we can practice these sealing jutsu together." Shin gave Kushina a reassuring smile. "Huh? That's not right. These are your mother's legacy. I can't practice them with you." Kushina shook her head. "Kushina, you're my best friend. You were there for me when everyone else shunned me. Of course I want to share good things with you." Shin placed a hand on Kushina's shoulder, his voice sincere. Shin was the grandson of the Uzumaki clan elder. His mother was the elder's daughter, but his father wasn't an Uzumaki. Not only was he not an Uzumaki, but he was from the Uchiha clan, once sworn enemies of the Uzumaki. During the Warring States period, the Uzumaki and Senju clans were allies, while the Uchiha and Senju were locked in a bitter feud. Because of their alliance with the Senju, the Uzumaki had clashed with the Uchiha numerous times. Even though the Warring States period was long gone, the animosity lingered. Naturally, Shin's parents' relationship didn't end well. The men returned to the Uchiha clan, and Shin's mother, heartbroken, eventually succumbed to her grief. Shin had heard that the man also died on a mission shortly after his mother's passing. This was the reason Shin wasn't well liked within the Uzumaki clan. Even his grandfather, the clan elder, treated him coldly. Soon, Shin had dinner ready. He was a decent cook, at least good enough for Kushina, who ate with gusto. After dinner, Shin called Kushina over, and they began studying the adamantine sealing chains and the 4-symbol seal. The adamantine sealing chains was an A-rank sealing jutsu. When used, it produced multiple chakra chains from the user's back. These chains were not only powerful offensive weapons but could also be used to create barriers and seal tailed beasts. The stronger the user's chakra, the greater the jutsu's power. And what were the Uzumaki known for? Their massive chakra reserves, of course. The Uzumaki possessed the sage body. Even Kushina, who had only recently learned to mold chakra, had reserves comparable to an average genin. With their powerful chakra and a sealing jutsu, even the Nine Tails would be wary of facing an Uzumaki. The Uzumaki clan's strength lay in their chakra and sealing jutsu. The seal used to contain the Nine Tails in Konoha was, in fact, an Uzumaki sealing jutsu. I don't get it at all. Am I just dumb? Kushina said, staring at the scrolls with a furrowed brow. Shin was engrossed in studying the jutsu. After coming to this world, he realized his learning ability had skyrocketed. He was starting to grasp the concepts behind the sealing jutsu, but mastering them would take time. After all, these were A-rank sealing jutsu. Many elite jonin couldn't learn them. It required a certain level of talent. They studied late into the night. When Shin finally set the scrolls aside, he noticed Kushina had fallen asleep beside him. Silly girl, falling asleep like that. Shin gently scooped Kushina up and laid her on the tatami mat, tucking a blanket around her. Well, time for me to hit the heitu. Shin stretched. A good night's rest was essential for the intense training he had planned for the next day. After washing up, Shin returned to his room and drifted off to sleep. Dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink as Shin opened his eyes. Another day, another chance to grind. Time to refine some chakra. Shin sat up and began his morning ritual. He had only received the chakra refinement technique a week ago. It was a standard issue scroll provided by the clan. Despite being ostracized due to his parentage, Shin still received the basic necessities. Things like a living allowance, the chakra refinement technique, and even those 2 sealing jutsu from yesterday. The adamantine sealing chains and the 4-symbol seal were prized even within the Uzumaki clan. Most elite jonin could only dream of learning them. Chakra was the fusion of physical and spiritual energy extracted from the 130 trillion cells in the human body. Overdoing it could lead to fatigue or even worse, risking one's life. Shin spent an hour refining chakra. Despite being only 5 years old and a newbie to chakra refinement, the amount he generated was startling. Thanks to his perfect sage body, the quality and quantity of his chakra were several times greater than that of a normal sage body. Sensing the energy coursing through him, Shin figured his chakra reserves were probably on par with a jonin. And this was just the beginning. If he kept refining his chakra for a few years, could he reach tailed beast levels? He thought of Hashirama, the man who wielded chakra like it was an infinite resource, even the 9 tails paling in comparison. Shin got up, washed up, and prepared breakfast. Kushina, breakfast is ready. Snooze, you lose. A while later, Kushina emerged from her room, yawning, her usually silky red hair a tangled mess. Go wash up, sleepyhead. Breakfast is getting cold. And look at your hair, birds could build a nest in there. Shin reached out and gently combed his fingers through Kushina's hair. Her face flushed slightly, but she was used to Shin's casual touch. After washing up, Kushina took her seat at the table. Shin had prepared a feast, fish, meat, and 2 large glasses of milk. Being a shinobi was energy-intensive, they couldn't skimp on nutrition. Proper fuel was essential for training. Both Shin and Kushina had healthy appetites, so Shin had prepared enough food for 5 people. Thankfully, the Uzumaki clan provided a generous allowance, and Shin supplemented their income by hunting in the forest. Otherwise, they'd be struggling to keep their bellies full. Kushina, after breakfast, it's training time. You're coming with me. Shin said as he ate. As a transmigrant, he knew the dangers of the Naruto world. He wanted Kushina to become stronger, to be able to protect herself. Kushina nodded. Staying home alone was boring, she'd rather train with Shin. After breakfast, Kushina took the initiative to wash the dishes. While she was busy, Shin opened his system interface and accepted the only mission on the quest board. He hadn't accepted it yesterday, but there was no point delaying. It was a mission he had to complete no matter what. Once Kusina finished with the dishes, they headed out to the nearby forest. "Kusina, you work on refining your chakra," Shin instructed. "Okay." Kusina sat on a clean rock and started the monotonous process of chakra refinement. Shin took out his weighted clothing and put it on. Then, he drew the short blade from his hip and began practicing his swordsmanship. Before he got the chakra refinement technique, Shin had focused on Kenjutsu and Taijutsu. With his perfect sage body, his physical strength was exceptional, making Taijutsu training twice as effective. The Uzumaki and Senju were natural-born brawlers. It was just that the Uzumaki clan prioritized sealing jutsu, neglecting their powerful physiques. After 1,000 swings, Shin wiped the sweat from his brow and took out his kunao and shuriken. 50 meters away, he had set up a target. It was crude, but it served its purpose. Shin focused, his blue eyes morphing into a blood red, a single black tomo swirling into existence. The target, which had been a small speck at 50 meters, was now crystal clear. The Sherinan, a one-tomo Sherinan. Shin had Uchiha blood flowing through his veins. Awakening the Sherinan wasn't surprising. He had awakened it when his mother died, but he had kept it a secret, even from Kusina. The fewer people knew, the better. If others found out he had the Sherinan, his life within the Uzumaki clan would become even more difficult. Fixing his gaze on the distant target, Shin launched a kunao. With the Sherinan's enhanced vision, he could clearly see the bullseye. The kunao struck dead center, its force so strong that it pierced through the target, leaving a gaping hole. After practicing kunao throwing for a while, Shin decided to move on. Compared to kunao throwing, mastering jutsu was far more critical. Next up, time to crack the sealing jutsu. Shin pulled out the jutsu scroll and started studying the adamantine sealing chains. He wasn't in a hurry to learn the 4-symbol seal. That could wait. Mastering the adamantine sealing chains would significantly boost his combat power, giving him a way to utilize his massive chakra. After all, what good was a mountain of chakra if you didn't have the jutsu to use it effectively? Shin had figured out some basic chakra control techniques, like channeling it to his legs for explosive jumps, propelling him several meters into the air. That's how he had been leaping onto trees, but his self-taught techniques were rough around the edges. Not only did they guzzle chakra, but they also put a strain on his legs. He was lucky to have a perfect sage body. A normal person attempting those jumps might end up crippled. What I need are the fundamentals. Shin tried to use the adamantine sealing chains, but nothing happened. He realized he didn't have the fine motor control needed to manipulate his chakra effectively. Despite his vast reserves, he couldn't achieve the precise control needed to channel chakra for complex jutsu. How could he learn the adamantine sealing chains with such poor chakra control? He needed to master the basics first. Tree climbing and water walking immediately came to mind. He had to start somewhere, and refining his chakra control was paramount. Under Kusina's surprised gaze, Shin began his tree climbing training. He had assumed it would be a piece of cake, but it turned out to be more challenging than he anticipated. Turns out having too much chakra can be a pain. The more chakra he had, the harder it was to control. It seemed there was a trade-off to everything. After countless face plants, I finally nailed tree climbing. Shin looked like he'd wrestled a mud monster and lost. He'd fallen out of the trees more times than he could count. But it was worth it. He could now scale a tree with the grace of a squirrel, his chakra finally under his command. "Shin, how did you do that?" Kusina stared at him with wide, awestruck eyes. "Heh, wanna learn?" Kusina nodded eagerly. "Nope, not gonna teach you. That's what you get for laughing at me." Shin crossed his arms. Kusina had found his repeated tumbles from the trees quite amusing. It couldn't be helped. Controlling his massive chakra reserves was no walk in the park, especially without a teacher. He'd had to figure it all out himself, the hard way. He'd mastered tree climbing through sheer stubbornness and a high tolerance for pain. "You're so mean," still holding a grudge. Kusina stuck her tongue out at him. "By the way, you don't like it when I call you Shin-chan, right? If I learn how to climb trees without using my hands, I'll stop calling you that. Deal?" It made him sound like a little kid. But Kusina was used to it. Breaking the habit would be tough. Kusina called him Shin-chan because he was younger than her. Well, only by 3 days, but still younger. She used to make him call her big sis, but as a transmigrant, there was no way he was calling someone his own age big sis. Fun. Shin nodded and shared all the tricks he'd discovered. With Shin's guidance and insider knowledge, Kusina mastered tree climbing in just half an hour. The girl was a natural. "Shin, I learned way faster than you," Kusina said, a smug grin on her face. It had taken Shin over 3 hours, while Kusina had done it in 30 minutes. But that didn't mean he was less talented. He'd had to figure it out through trial and error, while Kusina had a shortcut, thanks to him. After the tree climbing lesson, Shin led Kusina to a nearby river for water walking practice. Water walking was definitely trickier. Water offered no resistance, one wrong step, and you were taking a dip. Thankfully, Shin's tree climbing experience gave him a head start. He only fell in twice before he was walking, even running, on water. Kusina, on the other hand, wasn't having as much luck. She'd already fallen in a dozen times, much to Shin's amusement. After splashing around for hours, Kusina finally got the hang of water walking. "Kusina, you're officially a prodigy. Mastering both tree climbing and water walking at the age of 5, with such precise chakra control. That was prodigy-level stuff. Let's go change first," Kusina said, her clothes dripping. They went back, changed, and finally had lunch. It was already 3 in the afternoon. Kusina had stubbornly refused to eat until she mastered water walking, hence the late lunch. After their meal, Shin decided to skip training and headed towards the clan grounds with Kusina. "Shin-chan, why are we going to the clan grounds?" Kusina asked, surprised. "Didn't we have a deal?" Shin lightly flicked Kusina's forehead. "It's a habit. I'll get better, I promise." Kusina rubbed her forehead, pouting at Shin. Shin chuckled. Breaking that habit was probably going to be an uphill battle. "By the way, Shin, why are we going to the clan grounds? You don't usually like going there." They lived outside the clan grounds and rarely ventured in, except when they needed supplies. This wasn't a supply run. Shin wanted to put his replication card to use. As they entered the Uzumaki clan grounds, the atmosphere became livelier. The Uzumaki clan wasn't small, they had over 200 members. It was a far cry from their glory days during the Warring States period, but they were still a force to be reckoned with in any hidden village. "Hey, system, when I use a replication card, can I see the target's abilities? How am I supposed to copy something if I don't know what they can do?" "That is for you to determine, Master. This system does not possess such functionality." Fortunately, he had some knowledge of the Uzumaki clan ninjas. He pulled Kusina towards the clan's training grounds. The training grounds were vast, almost everyone in the clan trained there. Shin ignored the genin and shinin, his eyes scanning for jonin. The Uzumaki clan had its fair share of jonin. A large clan like theirs couldn't survive without them. But finding a jonin in this crowded training ground was like finding a needle in a haystack. Even if they came here to train, they'd likely find a secluded spot. Common replication cards could copy the chakra and physical abilities of a jonin at most, so Shin needed to find one to maximize his gains. Bingo! Shin spotted someone he knew, an Uzumaki jonin who specialized in taijutsu. System: use a common replication card to copy Uzumaki Hikaru's physique. Physique encompassed strength, speed, stamina, agility, and flexibility. He could copy each attribute individually, but that would be a waste of a precious replication card. In an instant, Shin felt his body swell. His bones hardened, his muscles tightened, all thanks to an unseen force. He felt lighter, more agile. This power is insane. Shin threw a punch, the force generating a sharp gust of wind. He was at least 7 or 8 times stronger than before. With his perfect sage body, Shin was already freakishly strong. Now, with this boost, he felt like he could punch a tree in half. System, does the copied strength stack with my original strength? Shin asked a crucial question. Affirmative. Copied attributes are additive to your existing capabilities. Shin's eyes lit up. If he could keep stacking attributes, why bother learning jutsu? If he could stack his physique to the level of Might Guy using the 8 inner gates, he'd be unstoppable with taijutsu alone. System, can I keep stacking with no limits? Your limitations are defined by the number of replication cards at your disposal, Master. As long as you possess replication cards, you can continue to copy and enhance your physique. Shin, what are you daydreaming about? Kushina nudged Shin, snapping him out of his trance. His conversation with the system had been a mental one, so to Kushina, he just seemed spaced out. Nothing much, Shin replied with a grin he couldn't quite suppress. Liar. You wouldn't be grinning like that if it was nothing. Something good must have happened. Fine, keep your secrets, Kushina huffed, pouting. Shin shook his head, his smile fading. He realized his earlier plan had been a bit too ambitious. Just as the system had said, his progress was limited by replication cards. Even with dozens of common cards, he wouldn't be able to stack his physique to Might Guy's 8 inner gates level. Besides, he'd never wanted to be a one-trick pony, specializing only in taijutsu. Being well-rounded was the key to minimizing weaknesses. Specializing in one area made you an easy target. Uzumaki Shin, is that you? Uzumaki Hikaru, the jonin whose physique Shin had just copied, looked over. A jonin's senses were sharp. Hikaru had noticed Shin staring at him. He had no idea that the physique he'd spent over a decade honing, enduring countless hardships to achieve, had been duplicated in an instant. Shin's system was truly broken. It allowed him to gain the fruits of someone else's labor without putting in the work. If Hikaru knew, he'd probably want to strangle Shin. But even without knowing, Hikaru wasn't exactly thrilled to see Shin. They had a history. Or rather, Shin had a history with Hikaru's son. Back when Shin was still living in the clan grounds, he'd had a run-in with the boy. Shin had broken the kid's leg, putting him out of commission for 3 months. Hikaru had been furious, ready to tear Shin apart. But even though Shin wasn't popular, he was still the clan elder's grandson. Hikaru couldn't touch him. Yo, Hikaru. Fancy meeting you here. How's your son doing? Shin asked with a casual smile. He wasn't afraid of the jonin. Not because of his own strength, though. Honestly, even with Hikaru's physique stacked on top of his own, he was no match for the experienced jonin in a fight. Shin lacked combat experience. Hikaru, on the other hand, was a seasoned warrior. Even with superior physical abilities, Shin would lose. He thought of Kagaya Itsutsuki, who, despite her immense power, was ultimately sealed due to her lack of battle experience. If Madara Uchiha had obtained Kagaya's power, he would have been truly unstoppable. Shin's confidence stemmed from his identity. No matter how disliked he was still the clan elder's grandson. Would Hikaru dare lay a finger on him? Humph. Hikaru snorted, reminding himself that Shin was just a child, not worth his time. But even so, he couldn't completely let it go. He glared at Shin before turning and walking away. He couldn't do anything to Shin, so out of sight, out of mind. Shin continued exploring the training grounds. He used another common replication card, this time copying a jutsu, the B-rank Shadow Clone Jutsu. The Shadow Clone Jutsu was created by the second Hokage, Tobirama Senju. But its practicality led to it being stolen by ninjas from other nations. Countless shinobi in the ninja world knew the Shadow Clone Jutsu, including those in the Uzumaki clan. Shin copied it from an elite shinin. With his perfect sage body and the Shadow Clone Jutsu, his training efficiency would skyrocket. Of course, he would have preferred the forbidden multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. Despite being A rank, it was classified as forbidden. Forbidden didn't necessarily mean powerful. Jutsu that caused harm to the user or were deemed too dangerous were classified as forbidden. This included jutsu like the Edo Tensei. Unfortunately, common replication cards couldn't copy A-rank jutsu, only B-rank at most. And even if he could copy it, he wouldn't find anyone to copy from. While many knew the Shadow Clone Jutsu, those who knew the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu were few and far between. With 3 replication cards remaining, Shin decided to call it a day. He left the training grounds with Kushina and bought some ninja tools and 2 chakra papers. Chakra papers were used to determine a shinobi's chakra nature. There were 7 chakra natures in total: wind, lightning, water, fire, earth, yin, and yang. The yin and yang natures couldn't be tested with chakra paper. Why did you buy these? They're so expensive. 1,000 ryo each. Kushina looked at the papers with distress. These are chakra papers. They tell you what kind of chakra you have. Here, try it. Kushina curiously took a chakra paper and channeled her chakra into it. The paper reacted immediately. It split down the middle, and the corners became damp. Kushina, your chakra natures are wind and water, Shin explained. Kushina looked confused. She didn't understand these concepts yet. Shin took a chakra paper and infused it with his chakra. The paper split, indicating wind nature. One corner ignited, revealing fire nature. Then, a corner became damp, water, another wrinkled, lightning, and the last one crumbled, earth. Shin possessed 5 chakra natures: wind, lightning, water, fire, and earth. Yin and yang couldn't be detected with the paper, but with his perfect sage body, he definitely had yang. And he also had the Sherinan, a manifestation of yin release, suggesting he likely possessed yin nature as well. This meant he might have all 7 chakra natures. That was definitely something to be excited about. Whoa, 5 transformations. You have 5 chakra natures. Shin smiled faintly, choosing not to mention yin and yang for now. It was getting late. They returned home before dark. Shin put away the ninja tools he'd bought and started preparing dinner. Kushina, what do you want to eat? He, anything you make is delicious. Shin smiled and decided to make a hearty meal. They'd had a long day of training and needed to replenish their energy. It was especially important at their age to eat nutritious food to support their growth and development. After a satisfying dinner, Kushina, exhausted, washed up and went to bed. Shin, however, continued studying the adamantine sealing chains. Half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Shin had made significant progress, mastering the adamantine sealing chains. Thanks to the Shadow Clone Jutsu, he could create over a dozen clones to study simultaneously. Even without a teacher, he managed to learn the jutsu on his own. Raise none. Shin focused on the large tree before him, a rapidly spinning sphere of chakra forming in his hand. He thrust his hand forward, smashing the Raise-nan into the tree trunk. Boom! Wood splintered and flew as the massive tree, one that would take 2 people to encircle, was pierced straight through, leaving a gaping hole with spiral patterns etched into its edges, a testament to the rotating chakra's power. If that hit a person, it would go right through them, no problem. Shin was more than satisfied with the Rasengan's destructive power. A-rank jutsu were no joke. He had developed the Raiznan himself. Understanding the principles behind it, recreating it wasn't that difficult. This was the culmination of his half-month's training. Not only had he mastered the adamantine sealing chains, but he'd also developed the Raiznan. That tree must have been decades old, and you just punched a hole through it, Kushina said, staring at the poor tree. Hey, Kushina, do you still want to learn the Raiznan or what? Of course I do. Teach me, teach me. Kushina jumped up, grabbing Shin's arm excitedly. Ouch, my shoulders are kinda sore. Shin sat down, looking expectantly at Kushina. Kushina knew what he wanted. With a reluctant sigh, she walked over and started massaging his shoulders. Not bad, but a little more pressure would be perfect, Shin said, leaning back with a satisfied sigh. Kushina gritted her teeth, but for the sake of learning the Raiznan, she endured. It's getting late, almost lunchtime. Let's head back. I'll teach you in the afternoon. Shin glanced at the sun high in the sky. Kushina, though eager to learn the Raiznan, knew that food came first. After lunch, Shin began teaching Kushina the jutsu. Half a day wasn't enough to master it, though. You can already burst a water balloon. That's the second stage completed. You'll have the Raiznan down in no time. As the sky darkened, Shin told Kushina to stop for the day and continue tomorrow. The Raiznan had 4 stages. The first was simple, gathering chakra in your palm. The second stage involved stable and continuous chakra release. This was practiced by placing a water balloon in your hand and releasing chakra to make the water inside move erratically until the balloon exploded. The third stage used a rubber ball. The goal was to maintain chakra release, solidifying the chakra until it could burst the ball. At the third stage, the Raiznan could already cause damage, but its power was limited. The final stage combined everything learned previously. High-density chakra was gathered in the hand, released continuously, maintained, and finally completing the jutsu. After dinner, Kushina went to bed. Shin returned to his room. I don't know why, but I have a bad feeling about this. Shin looked out the window. The sky was unusually dark, not a moon or star in sight. Can't sleep. Might as well refine some chakra. Time passed. It was past 1 in the morning when Shin finally stopped. He was feeling sleepy. Just as he was about to lie down, a loud noise jolted him awake. He rushed to the window. In the direction of the Uzumaki clan grounds, flames lit up the night sky. Could it be? His drowsiness vanished. He ran to Kushina's room. Kushina, wake up. Shin, what's going on? I was sleeping so soundly. Why did you wake me up? Kushina grumbled, her eyes barely open. Wake up, something's wrong. Shin flicked Kushina's forehead to bring her to her senses. This was no time for jokes. If his hunch was right, the disaster had struck the land of whirlpools. There was nothing he could do to stop it, but he could protect himself and Kushina. What's wrong? Kushina asked, seeing the seriousness in Shin's eyes. Shin pointed towards the window. Kushina followed his gaze and saw the fire raging in the distance. Whoa, the clan grounds are on fire. It's more than just a fire. We're under attack. Listen to that. Those explosions are from explosive tags. Who would dare attack the Uzumaki clan? Now's not the time to discuss that. Come on. Shin urged Kushina to get dressed, pack their essentials, and prepare to leave. Even though they were far from the clan grounds, there was no guarantee of safety. Captain, this is the outer perimeter of the Uzumaki clan grounds, right? Why is there a house here? Just as they stepped out, Shin saw several figures in ninja attire, their faces hidden behind masks. His heart sank. Kushina gripped his arm, fear creeping into her eyes. Well, look what we have here. A couple of stragglers. And just kids, 2. A ninja wearing a tanuki mask leered at them. Talk about bad luck. They were so far out, yet they still ran into enemies. The 5 ninjas were equally surprised. They had been tasked with sealing off the Uzumaki clan grounds, preventing anyone from escaping. They hadn't expected to find 2 children out here. Judging by their red hair, they were definitely Uzumaki. And if they were Uzumaki, they had to be eliminated. Enough chatter. Kill them. The leader of the squad ordered. The squad consisted of 1 jonin and 4 elite shinin. Seeing them move to attack, Shin swiftly pulled 3 shuriken from his pouch and flung them at the jonin leader. While the jonin was dodging, Shin made his move. He appeared before one of the chunin in a flash, leaping up and delivering a powerful blow to the ninja's neck. His speed was such that the chunin didn't even have time to react. The blow snapped his neck. Blood gurgled from the chunin's mouth. Within a second, he was dead. The entire encounter took less than 2 seconds. After taking down the chunin, Shin retreated to Kushina's side. Run. He scooped Kushina into his arms and fled towards the forest. Damn it. After them. The jonin leader roared in fury. To have one of his men killed by a 5-year-old brat, right under his nose, was a disgrace. The other 3 chunin snapped out of their shock. Shin's ruthless efficiency had stunned them. A 5-year-old, killing an elite chunin? Even in the brutal Warring States period, such a thing was unheard of. Shin, carrying me is slowing you down. Put me down. Kushina, nestled in Shin's arms, spoke up. You weigh about as much as a rabbit. How am I slow? Shin shot her a look. Ugh, you jerk, comparing me to a rabbit. Kushina lightly nipped his arm, then quieted down. Hey, Shin, if they catch up, just ditch me and run. I'll buy you some time. Just promise you'll avenge me, okay? Kushina's voice was barely a whisper. Don't be ridiculous. You think those clowns can catch us? Shin gave her another exasperated look. We practically live in this forest. We know it way better than they do. Besides, do you have any idea how fast I am? Don't worry. Shin had copied the physique of the taijutsu master, Uzumaki Hikaru. Combined with his already impressive physical abilities, he was more than a match for any taijutsu specialist. He was outpacing his pursuers with ease. If only he knew the body flicker jutsu, he could have vanished from their sight completely. Even now, he was leaving them in the dust. Master, you have triggered a new mission. Eliminate the pursuing squad. Reward, 1 advanced replication card accept. An advanced replication card, huh? Shin weighed his options. System, what are their strengths? He had taken out one of them with a single punch, but he didn't know their actual skill levels. The leader is a jonin. The remaining 3 are elite shinin. Shin hadn't expected the system to answer, but it did. Knowing their strengths, Shin accepted the mission without hesitation. If they had an elite jonin, he might have reconsidered. But a regular jonin? He could handle that. Shin stopped running. Why are we stopping? Are you tired? I told you to put me down. Kushina looked at him, panic rising in her voice. Kushina, we don't need to run anymore. I'm going to take them out. Are you crazy, Shin? They're real ninjas. We don't stand a chance. Kushina knew Shin was strong, but against actual ninjas. She didn't have much faith. Kushina, remember when I took out that guy back there? Kushina was speechless. He had indeed killed one, but that was a surprise attack. Kushina, you hide. Watch and learn. I'll show you what I'm truly capable of. Shin punched a nearby tree. With a loud crack, the tree snapped in 2. Kushina shook her head. I'm staying with you. Kushina, listen. I need you to hide and wait for an opportunity to ambush them. If I start losing, your surprise attack will give us a chance to escape. Persuaded by Shin's reasoning, Kushina agreed. She found a hiding spot, clutching her kunao and shuriken, ready to strike. Shin glanced back. Ninjas were excellent trackers. They would find him soon, following the trail he'd left. An idea sparked in his mind. He leaned against a large tree, panting dramatically, feigning exhaustion. If he could lure them into a trap, he would. Less than a minute later, the ninjas arrived. With one down, there were 4 left. Finally found a brat. Didn't expect him to be so fast, one of the Chunin remarked. They were exhausted from the chase. Captain, where's the girl? The Jonin leader scanned the area. Kushina had concealed herself well. In the darkness, the Jonin couldn't find her. She must have run off. Let's deal with this kid first. The Jonin drew his sword, approaching Shin slowly. Shin had killed one of his men right in front of him. He would avenge this humiliation personally. Shin watched the Jonin approach, a glint in his eyes. He'd hoped to ambush a Chunin, but having the Jonin come to him was even better. Little brat, out of steam, are you? Time to die. The Jonin grinned cruelly, his expression hidden behind his mask. As the Jonin lunged with his sword, Shin activated his Sharingan and sprang into action. He nimbly dodged the sword thrust and delivered a swift kick to the Jonin's groin. With Shin's speed and the close proximity, even an elite Jonin wouldn't have been able to dodge. The Jonin had been careless. Even though Shin had killed one of his men, he was still just a child. The Jonin had underestimated him. The result was inevitable. With a sickening crack, Jonin crumpled to the ground, a scream tearing from his throat. A shattered groin would bring even a cage-level ninja to their knees. The Jonin was effectively out of the fight. Shinobi had a high pain tolerance, but this kind of pain was unbearable for any man. You've gotta be the most pathetic Jonin to ever die, Shin remarked. He formed a Rasengan between his hands. He couldn't create it with one hand yet, so he had to use both. He pressed the Rasengan into the incapacitated Jonin's chest, the swirling sphere of chakra tearing through his heart. Took out a Jonin just like that. He was weaker than I thought. Shin blinked. It wasn't that the Jonin was weak. Jonin were the backbone of any hidden village. In smaller villages, they were the peak of fighting power. But this Jonin hadn't even had a chance to use his full strength. He'd been taken out before he could even react. This served as a reminder to Shin. In this dangerous world, he could never let his guard down. Otherwise, he might end up like this Jonin. He thought of Madara Uchiha, betrayed and used as a sacrifice for Kaguya Itsutsuki's revival. Your boss is dead. Care to join him? Shin's eyes hardened as he glared at the remaining 3 Chunin. With the Jonin out of the way, dealing with these 3 would be a piece of cake. The Chunin were still in shock. They couldn't believe their captain had been killed by a 5-year-old. It was so absurd that they couldn't process it. You killed our captain with dirty tricks. We'll avenge him, one of the Chunin shouted, rage fueling his voice. Shin eyed the 3 remaining Chunin, picking up the fallen Jonin's sword. So, you want to avenge your captain? Come get some. The 3 Chunin exchanged glances. None of them dared to make a move. This kid was creepy. He'd already killed one of them and taken down their captain. They weren't about to underestimate him now. Fine, I'll come to you then. Shin vanished into the darkness. In the thick forest, his speed and controlled ferocity, much like Toji Fushiguro, rendered him untraceable. Watch out. But it was too late. Shin's sword pierced the Chunin's heart before he could finish his warning. Shin withdrew his sword and dashed towards the next Chunin. Water style, water prison jutsu. Sensing the danger, the Chunin swiftly formed hand seals, encasing himself in a sphere of water for protection. The water prison jutsu was a C-rank jutsu that could trap enemies or be used defensively. You think that can stop me? How naive. Shin channeled chakra into the sword, enhancing its piercing power. The water prison shattered like a fragile bubble as the sword plunged through, impaling the Chunin's heart. Another one down. Just one left. Shin looked at the last Chunin. Killing these elite Chunin was starting to feel like sweating flies. Kakashi graduated and became a genin at 5, and everyone called him a genius. I'm 5, and I'm wiping the floor with elite Chunin. What does that make me? A prodigy? A monster? Shin muttered to himself. Monster. You're a monster. The last Chunin pointed at Shin, his eyes wide with terror. He turned and fled. You're the monster. And you're not getting away. Shin stomped on the ground, creating a small crater. He shot forward like an arrow, chasing after the fleeing Chunin. This guy was crucial to his mission. Shin couldn't let him escape. And for his and Kushina's safety, he couldn't leave any witnesses. Die. Shin quickly caught up, swinging the sword. It wasn't ideal for slashing, but with Shin's strength, it would cleave the Chunin in two. The sword connected, and just as Shin relaxed, the figure he'd struck transformed into a log. A substitution jutsu. Substitution. Shin hadn't expected the Chunin to use a substitution jutsu at the last moment. Adamantine sealing chains. Chakra chains erupted from Shin's back, snaking through the forest and ensnaring the fleeing Chunin. Constrict. The chains tightened, tearing the Chunin apart. Shin's face paled as he looked at the gruesome sight. He quickly turned away. He was used to blood, having hunted animals in the forest. He hadn't felt anything when he killed the first Chunin. The next few deaths had caused a slight ripple in his emotions, but this last one, this was too much. The chakra chains dissipated. Shin leaned against a tree, gagging. He swore he'd never use the chains like that again. It was too brutal, even for him. Congratulations, Master. Mission complete. You have been awarded one advanced replication card. Wio finally got the reward. Shin composed himself and called out to Kushina. Come out, Kushina. It's over. Kushina emerged, looking bewildered. It was over. It was too dark, and she didn't have the Sharingan. She hadn't seen anything. She walked over and saw the Jonin's body. Shin, how did you do it? Doesn't matter. Let's see what loot we got. Shin started rummaging through the Jonin's pouch while Kushina stood back, a little scared. Even though the ninjas were dead, she was still frightened. It was a good thing she hadn't seen the Chunin Shin had torn apart with the chains. She might have fainted. Shin found several explosive tags, a valuable commodity. There were also kunai, shuriken, and 2 jutsu scrolls. B-rank water style, water dragon jutsu and water style, hiding in mist jutsu. Shin frowned. These jutsu gave him a clue about the attackers' identities. They were likely from Kirigakure. Looks like Kirigakure is behind this attack on Ozashiogakure. Only the 5 great nations had the strength to attack the Uzumaki clan. Konoha was an ally, they wouldn't be involved. Tsunagakure and Iwagakure were too far away, attacking Ozashiogakure would be logistically impractical. That left Kyomigakure and Kirigakure, both of which could launch attacks from the sea. Kirigakure's involvement was confirmed. He wasn't sure about Kyomigakure, though. If there was one village with the most ambition, it was Kyomigakure. Their involvement was highly probable. After all, the Uzumaki sealing jutsu were something Kyomigakure would covet. No, not just Kyomigakure. Every village would want them. Possessing powerful sealing jutsu that others feared and desired, yet lacking the strength to defend themselves, was the reason for Ozashiagakure's downfall. Having something valuable without the power to protect it was a recipe for disaster, no matter the world. I wonder if Konoha had a hand in this. Shin was suspicious of their supposed ally. After all, Konoha had Danzo. To think Danzo wouldn't be interested in the Uzumaki's sealing jutsu was laughable. Shin shook his head, pushing those thoughts aside. He collected the pouches of the other two Chunin and left with Kusina. He left the last Chunin's pouch where it was. The sight was too gruesome. He'd lose his appetite if he looked at it. He led Kusina to a small stream in the forest, the same one where they had practiced water walking. Are you tired? If you are, get some sleep. We're safe now, Shin said. Kusina shook her head. After everything that had happened, sleep was the last thing on her mind. Shin, I'm worried. Kusina's voice was filled with anxiety. She was smart. If they had encountered enemies so far from the clan grounds, she could only imagine the horrors that must have befallen Uzushiagakuer. Worrying won't change anything. Shin shook his head. Despite not being well liked, he had received his due within the clan. He didn't want to see the Uzumaki clan destroyed. But he was powerless to stop it. He had known about the impending disaster, but who would have believed him? Besides, he didn't know when it would happen. Even if people believed him, they wouldn't have been able to prepare. The enemies had targeted the Uzumaki clan. Their attack was swift and brutal. In the original story, Uzushiagakuer fell before Konoha could even send reinforcements. As for him saving the clan, don't make him laugh. He wasn't going to get cocky just because he'd taken out a Jonin. Going there would be suicide. They sat by the river, Kusina leaning against Shin. Shin was a transmigrant. His body was that of a 5-year-old, but his mind was not. Kusina, however, was just a 5-year-old girl. Even though children in the ninja world matured quickly, the events of the night had shaken her to her core. Only in Shin's arms did she feel a sense of security. Shin, promise me you'll never leave me. Kusina looked up at him, her eyes pleading. She was terrified. When Shin had faced those ninjas, she had been so afraid he would be killed. She was relieved he was okay. If he hadn't been, she didn't know if she would have had the courage to go on. The thought of being alone was unbearable. I promise, Kusina. I'll never leave you. Shin met her gaze, his voice firm and reassuring. Kusina hugged him tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. Exhaustion finally caught up with her, and she drifted off to sleep. Shin smiled as he watched her sleep. He pulled out his pouch and examined its contents. He had already checked the Jonin's pouch. Besides ninja tools and 2 jutsu scrolls, there were some soldier pills and rations. He opened the pouches of the 2 Chunin. Kunao, shuriken, even senbon. More soldier pills, rations, and a few explosive tags. Explosive tags were valuable, but expensive. Their blast radius was small, but their destructive power was significant. He also found a jutsu scroll containing the chakra refinement technique and the basic Academy 3. The Academy 3 consisted of the substitution jutsu, transformation jutsu, and clone jutsu. They were the most basic E-rank jutsu. But basic didn't mean useless. The transformation and clone jutsu were easy to see through. Clones created with the clone jutsu couldn't attack. They were no match for shadow clones. The substitution jutsu, however, had its uses. It allowed for a quick swap with another object, useful for dodging attacks. The Chunin had used it to escape Shin's attack. Of course, as the most basic jutsu, it wasn't invincible. Its effectiveness depended on the user. The substitution jutsu allowed the user to swap with another object, but it wasn't space-time ninjutsu. It relied on speed. So, it was less effective against stronger opponents who could easily see through it. It was just an E-rank jutsu. It couldn't compare to something like Suzuki Uchihaze Menotajikira. Shin studied the Academy 3. He was a genius. It didn't take him long to master these simple jutsu. Hours passed. Dawn arrived, the sun peeking over the horizon. The warm sunlight seemed to dispel the darkness and gloom. Kushina woke up, rubbing her eyes. She looked around frantically, calming down only when she saw Shin. "Morning. Have something to eat." Shin handed her some dried meat. It was part of the food they had hastily packed before fleeing their home. "I'm not hungry," Kushina said, shaking her head. It wasn't that she wasn't hungry, she simply didn't have the appetite. "You have to eat. We need our strength in case we run into danger." Persuaded by Shin, Kushina ate a few pieces of meat. "I sent out shadow clones to scout. The invaders have left," Shin informed her. He had sent out 10 shadow clones to gather information. The invaders had left around 4 in the morning. And Shin knew they were safe now, because the system had awarded him the common replication card for completing the survival mission. They left. What about the clan grounds? Kushina's face lit up, but then her expression turned to worry. Shin shook his head, remembering the images his shadow clones had sent back. It was a bloodbath. He didn't know if there were any survivors. His clones hadn't found any. Kushina's heart sank. She knew it wasn't good. But as long as Shin was okay, she didn't care about the rest. After resting for a while, Shin and Kushina left the forest and headed towards the clan grounds. They could smell the stench of blood from a distance. "Kushina, don't be scared," Shin said, holding her trembling hand. Kushina nodded bravely and continued walking. But when they finally reached the clan grounds and saw the carnage, Kushina threw up. Even though Shin had seen the images through his shadow clones, the sight still made his stomach churn. Over 200 Uzumaki, practically all dead. The blood, it was truly a river of blood. And it wasn't just the blood of the Uzumaki. There must have been casualties among the invaders as well, though their bodies were nowhere to be seen. They must have taken their dead with them. "Kushina, are you okay?" Kushina shook her head, the meager breakfast she'd eaten now gone. The scene was too horrific. "Shin, our clan. The Uzumaki clan is gone," Shin said with a sigh. His desire for strength intensified. In this world, without power, this was the consequence. If the Uzumaki clan had someone like Hashirama Senju or Madara Uchiha, would they have met such a fate? Crack. A faint sound, but Shin's sharp ears picked it up. He looked towards the source. "Who's there?" Don't kill me." A young girl's terrified voice. Then a scream, followed by silence. "Red hair. A survivor." Shin pulled Kushina towards the sound. A girl their age lay unconscious in a pool of blood in front of a burned-out house. There was a cellar nearby. She must have hidden there to survive. She must have made a noise while climbing out, alerting Shin. Then, the sight of the destruction must have been too much for her. "That's Uzumaki Akiko," Kushina said, surprised, as she looked at the unconscious girl. "Oh, you know her." Shin didn't recognize the girl, but it seemed Kushina did. "We've met a few times, but we're not close." Kushina was only really close to Shin. She knew other kids in the clan, but they weren't friends. A short while later, Akiko woke up. She looked around in a panic, but calmed down when she saw Shin and Kushina's red hair. Red hair was a trademark of the Uzumaki clan. Of course, there were exceptions, like Koji Akimika's father, Choza, who also had red hair. But most people associated red hair with the Uzumaki. "Who are you?" Akiko didn't recognize Shin and Kushina. She guessed they were Uzumaki survivors, but it was better to be safe than sorry. It wasn't surprising that she didn't know them. Shin and Kushina lived far from the clan grounds. Even when they had lived within the clan, they hadn't interacted much. Shin had never even seen Akiko before. "Same as you," Shin replied simply. Akiko fell silent, her eyes filled with sadness as she looked at the destruction around her. Tears streamed down her face as she thought of her parents. Should we comfort her? Kushina asked Shin. How? Let her cry. She'll have to rely on herself from now on. Being strong is better. Shin shook his head and sat on a nearby rock, contemplating their future. He had two choices: leave with Kushina and live a life on the run, or wait for Konoha's reinforcements and go with them to Konoha. He glanced at Kushina and made up his mind. They would go to Konoha. It was the safer option. With their distinctive red hair, wandering around would make them targets. And as two young children, where could they even go? It would be incredibly difficult. Going to Konoha offered safety and security. As long as they didn't draw too much attention to themselves, they would be fine. Especially with Uzumaki Mito still alive. Even the scheming Danzo wouldn't dare try anything. In Konoha, Shin could also learn the basics of being a shinobi, which were essential. Konoha was the best choice. But if they went there, he would have to change Kushina's fate as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. He didn't want that for her. The Nine-Tails' power was immense, a great asset if used correctly, but it was also a ticking time bomb. And being the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki meant a life under constant surveillance, with Anbu watching your every move. As for himself, Shin never wanted to become a Jinchuriki. He simply didn't need the Nine-Tails. With his perfect sage body, once he grew stronger, he could take on the Nine-Tails single-handedly. And with his Sharingan, he could probably subdue the beast with a glance. With the system at his disposal, why would he need the Nine-Tails? But most importantly, he didn't want something else living inside him. It was an unsettling thought. Shin's gaze shifted to Akiko. It wasn't just him and Kushina anymore. There was another Uzumaki survivor to consider. Kushina, come here. I need to talk to you. Kushina, though curious, walked over. Kushina, Konoha's reinforcements might arrive soon. They might take us to Konoha. If we go, remember, don't stand out too much. Shin advised. When choosing a Jinchuriki, they would look for someone with talent. Standing out too much might attract the attention of the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, and the shadowy Danzo. Hiruzen would be fine, but Danzo, that was a different story. Kushina didn't understand why Shin was saying this, but she nodded, committing his words to memory. Another day passed. The sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows over the blood-soaked ruins of Ozashiagakuur. Asterisk thump. 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 Asterisk. Footsteps. Shin's senses went on high alert. His left hand went to his pouch, gripping an explosive tag. His right hand held a katana. He was a bit small to be wielding a katana, but he had found it among the debris. It had a few chips, but it was still usable. Kushina moved closer to Shin, and Akiko, frightened, huddled next to them. 3 kids. A woman with striking blonde hair and cold eyes approached them. Despite her beauty, her expression was intimidating. Several other ninja followed behind her. You're Uzumaki, right? Don't be afraid. I'm a Konoha shinobi. My name is Tsunade. Tsunade's harsh gaze softened. Seeing the state of Ozashiagakuur had filled her with rage, hence her initial coldness. Hearing her name, Shin relaxed, but he couldn't help but stare. He couldn't believe this was Tsunade. She was so flat. He couldn't fathom how she would transform into the, well, Busta woman she would become. Are you all that's left of the Uzumaki clan? Tsunade asked. I don't know. Maybe there are other survivors. Shin was certain there were others, but they had either escaped the land of whirlpools or were in hiding. Let's search the area. See if we can find anyone else. Damn it, if I find out who did this, I'll. Tsunade's killing intent flared. The Uzumaki were her grandmother's people. They had a long-standing alliance with the Senju clan. During the Warring States period, the Uzumaki had fought alongside the Senju against the Uchiha. Tsunade was furious, but it was useless now. She had rushed to the land of whirlpools as soon as she received the news, but it was too late. The enemy had annihilated the Uzumaki clan in a single night. They must have planned this for a long time. Shin couldn't help but roll his eyes at Tsunade's tough talk. Empty threats were so childish. Unfortunately, Tsunade caught his expression. She glared at him. This little brat was looking down on her. Hey, brat, what was that look for? What look? Shin feigned innocence. Don't play dumb. I saw you. You were totally dissing me. Shin wanted to nod, but he thought better of it. Tsunade was known for her temper. She might just punch him. Nope, not me. You must be mistaken, Shin denied, maintaining his facade of innocence.